If you're seeing me, say hello. Uh-oh, I'm echoing. All right, let me see. Why am I echoing?
The remix.
Hey, everybody. We're going to be with you in just a second, making sure that we are live, and it looks like we are. If we have any audio or technical difficulties, y'all know, just tell me. We'll fix it. But happy Wine Wednesday. I hope you've had a fabulous week. I hope your seahorses, tanks, turn down the phone, and etc. are doing fantastic. And I have an extra special guest. Oh, shoot, I forgot to tell y'all. Sipping on bread and butter and Pinot Noir. Still haven't got the new wine glass, but hey, it's all good, right? And I would love to hear how you're doing. So make sure that you give me the big thumbs up and tell me any questions you have in the comment section. We're going to have everybody else jump in after I get to quiz our extra special guest from AquaChar. Brian, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And so you are the co-owner, correct, of AquaChar. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started, what brought you to this business?
Absolutely. So I'm a hobbyist. I've been doing freshwater competition tanks for about 15 years now. I've had a reef tanks for about 10 years at this point. Um, yeah, so I was a hobbyist, always kind of looking for that angle on how to get in the industry and everything like that. So yeah, I happened to stop by a fish store one time, and I met the inventor of AquaChar. He was in the prototyping phase. He was working with a local university, doing some testing and everything, making sure it was safe. And lab testing only goes so far when you're putting it into a system with live animals. So um, he was working with a local fish store, doing the tang thing, making sure we don't have the hole in head, lateral line issues, and even more sensitive fish, like the seahorses and stuff like that. So I met the inventor. I personally had my own experience with whole and head lateral line disease. So I kind of swapped out my carbon use for just good husbandry, hours and hours of water changes and everything like that. So when I met the inventor, it was kind of a different angle he was taking, as using carbon as a biomedia or a long-term use.
Oh,
Carbon.
gotcha. And Ray, I do see that he's freezing up a little bit again. You know what, guys? We're live on the internet, so we're if something's missed, then just let us know, and I can ask him to repeat it. So real quick, because obviously I deal with seahorses, but um, tell me a little bit more about the lateral line disease. Is that what you said? What's the proper name of it?
I think they call it whole and head lateral line disease. I've seen it called a couple different things.
And is it like caused? Do people think that it's
Um,
caused by
it's an issue
carbon?
that's kind of been associated with activated carbon. Long-term use.
Gotcha.
Well, a lot of people have a misinterpretation that it's caused by the fines of carbon. The stuff that kind of catches in the water. My personal feeling is it's more of those internal, like pre-smoked tars and resins that they do when they're making activated carbon. Because you got to remember, activated carbon is made for a short lifespan. Usually, medical uses like pumping stomachs and stuff like that, dialysis. Our municipal use where it's a regular maintenance routine. So uh, they aren't necessarily worried about internal impurities and stuff like that, like we would be in the aquarium side. So as CO2, saltwater even is caustic, and it can eat away at some of those, with granular activated carbon, or get into those internal areas to leach some of those harmful chemicals into the water.
And so what does, oh, I'm sorry. Close the door fast. Yes, and you're being loud. Sorry, kids. Okay, anyhow, so what makes Aquachar different than regular activated carbon that allows it to not be associated with these problems?
Yeah, so that was actually something that I was very interested. So one of the main things that we do is, we make it like in a batch process type of method, kind of like a craft beer and stuff like that. We're looking more for the quality and consistency. So we maximize the time and temperature. So the carbon, we use wood. The carbon of the wood can internally structure and force out those impurities and leave behind more of a carbon natural porosity of like the vascular system of a tree and stuff. So it allows us to have a little bit larger size carbon that can turn into a biological microsite. So you can have your bacteria living inside of it. You got your aerobic and anaerobic bacteria working together, for the long-term use aspect of it.
Gotcha. And the wood is what makes the big difference. Just to make, because you kind of broke up. The wood is the key, correct?
The key is the time and temperature. So we try to
Oh, cool.
maximize the temperature. We create a very
Got it.
specific environment where there's not the oxygen that can kind of break it down and turn it to ash. Um, it's the time and temperature that we do when we're making the process together. There's some other chemistry and stuff like that, but we control the oxygen inputs and everything like that to make sure that we're not just, it's not like you're just a fire pit type of machine product.
Gotcha. And I know that I'll probably ask the question wrong, but what I'm really curious too about. We were talking last week. I told everybody you were coming, and I was telling them how one of the claims on AquaChar's website
Mhm.
is that it can also be used, as you're talking about, as for bacteria. So there's other uses to it.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, like, does that mean that you can leave this in longer than the typical active or charcoal or activated carbon? Or
Yeah,
does it still need to
actually,
be replaced? Okay.
yeah. So what we actually recommend is we're carbon that you add more to the old. So
Oh,
once a month during your routine maintenance, you can put it in a mesh bag or anything like that. Just kind of rinse it off, treat it like live rock you can rinse. It's kind of like you mess up with the biofilm a little bit, and it'll reestablish itself to whatever your problems are this week instead of what it's built up in the last, since you had it in the system. So we recommend is you take when you're part of your routine with AquaChar. We say it lasts 3 to 6 months, but part of your routine is you add new to the old. So you get kind of like a biological side as well as the chemical filtration side.
gotcha. Makes sense. And that's cool. So there's like we don't have to worry about leaching back out or anything like that, right?
Yeah, no, we don't have any of the leaching issues or anything like that. I mean, uh, yeah, we usually have the biological stability that'll kick in a couple weeks after you add it, because at first you add it to the system, it starts taking in organics, and then you have the bacteria that comes in to break them down. Um, so if anything, it's more of converting your organics to those biologically available nutrients that your system grows off of.
Gotcha. And tell me about really quick about the shape and the size. For instance, when I went to guys, the reason that I got interested in AquaChar is because I'm doing the Women in Reefing series, and every single interview, people keep telling me about AquaChar, and I was like, well, I got to know more about this. And I hooked up with Brian. But when I went to the website, you have flakes, and then you have these um, odd shaped pieces, which is what I got.
Yeah.
What's the why does the shape matter, and tell us about that?
Yeah, so we made the choice because we're trying to make it a biological microsite. We found that the larger size actually lets that internal porosity be used by the bacteria. So you can get more of a aerobic anaerobic balance within breaking down of organics and stuff like that. So there's a biogeochemical breakdown with your bacteria. So like basically one bacteria eats the waste of the next one to the next one, the next one. So that's how in a natural environment things get broken down. So the larger size, the reason we sell that specifically to the aquarium market rather than the flakes that people are more accustomed to with activated carbon, is to be able to have that long-term biological aspect of it.
Hmm.
Um, and the size was by choice to make it a biological media versus just the flakes.
Gotcha. And so, are there certain use cases for the flakes? Like, when do you suggest that?
But yeah, we use it in agriculture, some
Okay.
other things. They're fine for water purification, but it's more of a short-term use before it gets covered with organics and stuff like that. It was
Gotcha.
just a personal choice to make ourselves unique because we were trying to promote the biological side of it, not just we already do the carbon things for longer and better than activated carbon. We wanted to promote people to the mentality with this is more like a ceramic biomedia that's actively pulling in organics versus just kind of passively eating whatever falls on it.
Gotcha. That's the difference. So not only is it just better in general, but it's also got additional uses. And one
Yeah.
question you actually sent to me, I'm sure there are other questions, guys. Go ahead and start asking them in the comments, and I will let you guys in just a second, in about 10 minutes. But one of the things, can you tell me about, can you tell the audience, sorry, you already told me, about the case study that you just posted and that was recently occurred? Because I know Ray wants to know about any
Yeah.
studies.
Yeah. So one of the things that we did was, well, at Magna, before everything, went down with the pandemic, we actually talked to the Triton Latin America thing at the show, and they bought some for their own personal tanks. So we followed up with them, and he posted that, or his response to using AquaChar said, it's wonderful. Not only did it work better than other activated carbons, he said he did 30 days ICP analysis, and he would testify that there was no leaching in that. So we passed this on to one of our distributor in Holland also produces bacteria for a bacteriologist over there. So we met him at RAP New York. He actually flew into New York to come meet us, and he was looking at this guy does a lot of greenhouse works and stuff like that for in Holland. So he was curious as a biological media. He had looked at biochar, but found that it would often, like those pre-smoked tars and stuff, would often kill the bacteria rather than make it a real surface. So it kind of takes like time for the bacteria to do its housekeeping before it can move in. Whereas with AquaChar, it's more of a blank slate for the bacteria to kind of move in on its own and start finding its own safety and protection inside.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Cool. And guys, I will link that when we're done because, as I said, he posted it today. So if you want to read more details about that, you can. And actually, what I should have
Yeah,
asked you from.
let me finish that. So one of the
Oh,
things
I'm
that
sorry.
bacteria,
You froze, and I didn't. I thought you were done. I'll shut up now. Sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, fine. I paused for a minute, but let me finish with what we did. Uh, so the rest of the study. So once the bacteriologist came in and we showed him the results from the ICP test, he started a 8-month long study to test AquaChar as a biological media. Um, so one of the first interesting things that happened is those first like few months, uh, the bacteria amount from his initial dosing quadrupled in those first 6 months or first 3 months and found it balanced. So then what he did was he wanted to see whether AquaChar was a food source or if it was bringing in the food. So he cut off feeding for a month and saw that the bacterial load went down because once you're not inputting food, you drastically see a change in your biological balance in your system. So about 6 months in, he added new bacteria to the existing batch that he'd been working with. Um, and he ran it for another, I think, 4 months. And in that time, he saw that bacteria stabilized at about that 4 times the original dosing amount, which has a lot to do with the inputs and the ability for the biological. I often hear the comment that anything can be a biological media, but with AquaChar, since it's actively, the way I describe it, it's like free Uber Eats for your bacteria. The carbon's naturally pulling in those fine organics from your water that they eat, allowing them to work. At shows, I look over my shoulder and I say, bacteria is lazy just like me. They just want to eat and reproduce. So AquaChar is promoting that type of environment for a healthy biological load.
Oh no, I get it. That's really makes perfect sense. I see your questions, guys. I'll ask them in a second. But yeah, I mean exactly. The bacteria makes its little house there, and it's like fast food being delivered. I mean,
Yeah,
right? Bring me the
yeah. Like I said, it's like Uber Eats. That's a
yeah.
good pandemic analogy. It's like Uber Eats. They can sit at home and not have to worry about how they're going to get their food or go to the grocery store or anything like that.
Absolutely. Hey, and for you guys in the audience, I do know it keeps catching a little bit. I will edit this when it's done, but literally, if you watch, it catches and then he finishes the sentence. So you're still getting all the information, and I'll make sure to edit when we're done. Okay. Before I ask the comments questions, one thing I should have asked from the very start was a little bit more about your co-owner, your partner, because this isn't just two guys pulling some stuff together. Like you said, you've got a biologist and a micro guy and all this other stuff. So tell me a little bit about him, just like what you shared with me about why he decided to even get involved and why it mattered to him.
Yeah, so actually, he did not invent this product for the aquarium market. That's kind of more of my doing. What he did was he was working on a project for the bank in Nigeria. He worked within encryption and computers, but also has a science background. He does quantum encryption, if that's of any interest to people.
Cool.
But anyways, he ended up getting sick in one of the best hotels in the capital city of Abuja, Nigeria. So when he got sick, he started realizing that if he was getting sick in the best that the city has to offer, uh, what is everyone else doing out there in the bush of Africa and everywhere else? He started to realize that waterborne illnesses is basically the number one killer of humans in the world, and he wanted to find. He tried to think of a solution that could be made locally and would work longer than the activated carbon, because the activated carbon market is very reliant on you swapping it out every 2 weeks and buying more, buying more, buying more. And he went with the mentality that we have technologies to make this last longer, then why aren't we doing it? So he started from scratch, did a lot of prototyping for almost a year before he kind of came up with his general formula, and moved back here because he had connections at the university uh, and here in Florida. Also, there's a lot more wood here in Florida.
Right.
So yeah, shortly after he moved back, I met him and we kind of started plotting out, how do we get testing? How do we know this product's safe? We started working with some other people and getting other people excited about it, and formulating how to, make it a product. So we went into the aquarium market, showing that, it was a consumer-based market that had firsthand knowledge of what activated carbon can and can't do in a biological system. So we went make or break is, if we can convince the customers on this end, we can really find some interesting bits and pieces of what we're actually do, what we could actually do for the environment versus, municipal water purification plant.
Yep. No, I'm so glad that you did bring it to the aquarium market. I mean, my goodness. And yeah, I just love this. It's like not, instead of just being chemical, it's now biological too. It's awesome. Okay, and let's see. D wanted to know, D from Brooklyn, yo, what's up? And he wants to know, can your product be reactivated? Did that does that question make
Yes,
sense?
we
Okay.
actually, yeah. So like I said, we usually say, once a month you rinse it off, kind of like to kind of general biofilm remediation. But we also have a process which we actually just released this a couple months ago. We wanted to make sure testing it and everything like that it was going to be safe. But hydrogen peroxide, you can take out, like I say, add new to the old. Some people have a full bag, you'll take out half of it, and you can put it in a hydrogen peroxide bath for like 12 to 24 hours. And what that does is it kind of frees up some of that. It's a biofilm remediation, plus it frees up some of that unused porosity on the AquaChar. So yeah, there is a regeneration process. It can be regenerated and use it. Granted, there's nothing like the initial reaction of fresh AquaChar, but as a biological media, it definitely works very well in that aspect.
And this is just me asking now, what's the longest? I've seen many videos and I plan to make some showing I'm already using it, guys, on the new all-in-one tank and on the 65-gallon with the whole lot of the crazy erectus. So I'm using it in two very different tanks, one new, one very old, to kind of give you guys ideas. But I've seen lots of videos of people trying it out and really enjoying it. What's the longest anyone's kept? Like, you've been very clear, you need to replenish, that's how it's going to work, peroxide. But
Yeah,
what's the longest somebody's kept it in the tank and not touched it and it stayed a-okay? Or do you know?
I honestly, I think there's, yeah, it's interesting you asked that. There's actually, I have one customer. She's actually the CEO of, her and her boyfriend are the CEO, or she's the CEO of the Ocean Rescue Alliance.
Oh,
Uh, she met him like, met the inventor Ricky a week before that I met him. So we always joke that they always joke that they had seniority over me at shows and stuff like that. But they've had it in their tanks. I believe the same batch they just added to it. They have a big Fowler 400-gallon system for almost 2 years at this point.
so and if I totally do
Maybe more than
get,
that. Yeah.
right. So I do
So,
get that it
uh,
becomes a biolog. Oh, sorry, you were still talking. Go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, you're good.
I was just gonna say, so obviously that kind of proves, at least in that case, that it can seriously become a biological media. But does the chemical part of it stop working after so long? Like if you don't replenish?
Honestly, I'm looking to find out where that point is because I consistently have people come to me and say, "Oh, I forgot to pull AquaChar. I dosed some flux for some hair allergy, or I dosed some flatworm X, and it didn't work for me because I forgot to pull the AquaChar, and it was 3 or 4 or 5 months old AquaChar at that point." So the chemical side is very lasts a lot longer, even if it's not the physical. Like you might get some yellowing of the water, with the daily putting your hands in the tank or just you know little things. It does help with that chemical aspect of balancing it out. Even chemical warfare within your system.
Yeah, for sure. My coral's fighting. And real quick, there's more questions, but how is there? Do you have any recommendation? I know I've asked you these questions on the side myself
Yeah.
because I'm using it, but do you have any recommendation about how it should be placed? Like, does it need a lot of flow through? Can you just throw it in the sump? Any advice about placement?
So I get asked this question a lot, and I do. I have plenty of customers who they'll want to run it in a reactor, which it works fine because you can control the flow in the reactor and everything. It needs moderate flow. It doesn't need super high flow or super low flow. It just needs interaction with the water because in a closed loop system, it'll get what it can get and it'll get the next time if it doesn't get it that time. So I go back and forth on whether a reactor works better or just a mesh bag works better. I find it easier for me personally with the mesh bag to just be able to pull it out and rinse it off and then put it back in there. So I have a lot of customers who will take it and put the new stuff in a reactor, and then once they're done with it, they'll put like a big mesh bag and they'll have it that they use it as kind of like their once a month rents and biological media side of it.
Well, and just you talking about it being able to be regenerated, and once you mentioned hydrogen peroxide, I know Dan's going to have a question if he's here yet, but because that's cool. We are peroxide freaks. We love peroxide for everything, but in the little Seahorse group here, but
Yeah.
but that's really cool that it can be regenerated. That makes it much more cost effective, and yeah, just bravo. Okay, I'm going back to other people's questions. Um, Dylan's little hobby said, so would this be more effective than average biofiltration like marine pure?
Um,
Or,
yeah, it is. It's. I believe it's more effective from a biological standpoint because, like I was saying, you have the active pulling in of the organics, um,
the fast
and
food.
also you have the easy ability to rinse it off. The other advantage is it doesn't break down over time. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of those ceramic medias and stuff like that will turn to mush, and people don't realize, you'll hear stuff like it's releasing aluminum and things like that. And those issues don't show up in their lab testing, but shows up in their real world usage from CO2, carbonic acid, just natural acids that get built up in your system from having living animals in it. So yeah, it works better as a biological media than the ceramic bioblocks. We also integrate the same ceramic hydroxide technology that they have into our carbon. So we have very similar technologies as far as AquaChar in ceramic bioblocks. It's just whether it's ceramic based or carbon based.
Makes sense. No, I get it. And that's good to know because that was a question. I had a tank that, I kind of like broke down, took the water out, just let it
Mm-hmm.
sit, never really cleaned it up. And I went back and I was using, and I'm not saying anything bad because I like,
Yeah.
I'm using the Marine Pure spheres on my tank now, but I had one of the bricks and it was
Oh
oh
yeah.
man, it was dust everywhere. It was terrible. But that could have been because I left it sitting without, I'm not saying anything bad, but it's good to know that
Well,
AquaChar does not do that.
yeah, and I've always had the same thing. I've traditionally used those ceramic blocks and stuff like that, and I've noticed that they get flaky and stuff like that over time. But as a hobbyist, I always assumed that it's like a rock; it's not going to just dissolve or get mushy or anything like that. So for me, it was definitely interesting when I heard from hobbyists that, this was a more common issue than anything else. So,
Gotcha.
but
I
yeah,
was
since we're using the carbon-carbon bonds, we keep that structure together. It's a natural porosity versus a artificial heated porosity or an acid wash porosity.
and being porous matters. You've already covered that. I was looking. I'm trying to play it cool and look up the question that I put on the post because you did. I think you just said it, but you had this phrase that I really wanted to ask about. How about I ask another question of someone else's while I'm looking? Okay. D
Okay.
asked. D from Brooklyn said, "Is there a study regarding the activated carbon and HLE in tanks? Do you know that you know of?"
Uh, I don't know. I'd have to look. It's been a while since I've done any real research on activated carbon. Our process is completely different than the way activated carbon is made today. And with laboratory studies on something like that, they tend to send in their best products for those testings and not just random samples as much. So I know that there's been a lot of anecdotal stuff with whole and head lateral line disease. I know I personally experienced it when I back in like 2008. A lot of companies thought carbon's carbon and just went with the cheap China stuff, and they didn't care whether it was going in an aquarium or if you got they killed your fish. So
Yep. And listen, really quick, I'm gonna go ahead and start admitting all of you guys waiting in the waiting room. So
really,
here you come. But and I did find Brian. I found the question but you did I think just cover it. Ceramic biomedia technology integration. But I think you just said that.
yeah,
And and welcome, Patty. One last question from me before
yeah,
you guys share your experiences. Tell me about the pH side of this because that's something that saltwater hobbyists and seahorse keepers are really care about. How does AquaChar affect the pH?
yeah. So AquaChar isn't specifically like a buffer of pH. What we do is we integrated some of the ceramic biomedia, like I just mentioned, the hydroxides, as part of the ceramic biomedia. So rather than activating the carbon with oxygen, we're attaching hydroxides onto the surface, and we're using the physics of carbon basically just as a slow release mechanism for the hydroxides. So a lot of people that get stuck in like that 7.8, 8.0 range really struggle with just getting a little boost. I've seen, even anonymous reviews. My wife threw away the bag, and I forgot what this carbon was called, but I was stuck in this range, but now I'm above 8.0 all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what we do is it's a slow release mechanism for hydroxide. So uh, not everybody sees it, and it's not a right away thing, but usually about 2 to 3 weeks in, people see about a point 0.2 jump if their systems. See, pH is a difficult topic. Yeah,
Right.
you can have so many different things. Even like rocks can be a buffer in your system. Even like live rocks and dry rocks can be a buffer in your system. People don't even think about it. So, but yeah, the hydroxides will slow release in your system in the meantime, a kind of a balance. Not specifically like dosing calc or anything like that, but it's internal balance, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yep. And you said her hydroxides and it went right over my head. But no, I'm kidding. I heard you and I get it. And actually, guys, I'm actually going to credit another YouTuber and put a link when I'm done because she did an awesome experiment with AquaChar. And her entire first half of the video says, I really didn't, because her
Yeah,
goal was pH.
yeah,
Stabilizing pH, and the first half of the video, she was like, "See, it's not going to work. It doesn't work." And then she like left for a week or something and came back, and she was like, "Oh my gosh!" And she has this 24-hour visual of the pH going up and down. So I'll link that video when we're done because she ended up being a thumbs up for AquaChar. So sometimes if it doesn't happen overnight, obviously they're not saying this is a buffer,
yeah.
but if
And
it
it,
helps,
yeah, and that's an interesting topic because I try to explain to people that a lot of the CO2 issues and stuff like that, if you have a high growth system, it can be internally produced and be an issue, not necessarily with what you're with people breathing in your house, but it could be so with AquaChar, coinciding with that 2 to 3 weeks back when we know that the biological side really kicks in, leads me to believe it's more of like a internal balancing of the CO2 versus like a kalkwasser where you're trying to actively pull the CO2 that your tank's absorbing.
Right. Gotcha. It keeps freezing a little bit, so I'm always afraid I'm interrupting you. But no,
Okay.
yeah. So just added benefit, but not the focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't understand all the science of it, but hey, Miss Patty from Her Nanos Reefs has joined us. Thank you for coming and jumping in, Patty. And I know you've got a thunderstorm going on, so I just want to ask really quick, what's been your experience with AquaChar?
Yeah, I have a severe T storm warning right now going.
Oh.
I'm like, I have the window right in front of me, so I'm like looking and like making sure I don't have to run, if the power outage, I'm like,
Oh, no.
like going, making sure I have enough power for my tank. But yeah, so I had AquaChar for a couple of months. And currently on my mixed reef, I do not use any activated carbon. I did took out all the like chemical filtration and it's doing great, but I do have a robust sump. Like I have a algae scrubber. I have a really good skimmer and everything is like oversized for my mixed reef. So I kept getting zero phosphate, zero nitrates, and I didn't want it to like have to put then another supplement to get the phosphates and nitrates up. So what I did is I took all the chemical filtration and I'm overfeeding, but enough for having a little trace of elements. And I just wanted a more natural way. And it's working for that one. But for my anemone tank, I only have the skimmer live rock, which the skimmer is also way oversized. But one thing, because I did saw that video recently about I believe it's Reef Girl is her Instagram handle, and I saw that the pH, and then I was just going through because I have a controller for both of my tanks, for the mixed reef and the anemone tank, and I was wondering for months, like, why is my anemone tank at like 8.2 pH, and my mixed reef, I'm trying to like fight for it to give me an 8 at least. And then when I saw it, it's like, oh, guess what? I have AquaChar on one and I don't have AquaChar on the other. They're on the same space on my living room, just a little bit distance. And funny enough, the mixed strip is closer to my sliding glass door. And now it's like everything clicks. It's like, oh, okay, so it's true. It does work because I see a huge difference between both tanks. And so, yeah, definitely. I was like, okay, so I do believe that. So I'm definitely going to be adding AquaChar on my mixed reef and checking also because, I want to, it's right now balanced. So I wanted to keep it balanced. So I want to make sure that it's not going to do too much changes on the tank because I really like how the mixed reef is doing. But yeah, and besides that, of course, the water super clear with AquaChar. Like my fish it feels like my fish are flying. I think we're out of water. I forgot. I think it's my fish are flying. I don't remember. Or I don't know, but it's like super clear water. I haven't had any problems with AquaChar. And normally I also use it for seeding other tanks. Like I keep the AquaChar there even after like months. And then if I'm, let's say, putting together a nano tank, I just grab the AquaChar and put it on like the sun, put it on the back chamber and help feeding my other tanks. So yeah, I definitely, I do like AquaChar. I have used it and yeah, pretty legit product.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah, I think that's exactly why I got really interested is when you told me about it and you said that you actually use it as a means to start new tanks. I was like, oh, heck no. That's so, because we talk about that all the time in Seahorse world here, having media ready to start a new tank, especially if you have little frylets come along or whatever. But yeah, so very cool. And Brian, I'm curious, along with what Patty was saying, if you've got a tank that you've really dialed in and you maybe want more stable pH, but you don't want like to be removing, obviously AquaChar only does organics, right? But just would you recommend putting less in to start off to make sure it doesn't upset the balance or?
Yeah, one of the things I always say is, especially when people have more sensitive tanks, I say start with a half a dose.
Mm.
And to be honest with you, most people see the same visual results with half a dose as they do with a full dose. They just get longer lifespan out of it. So usually I say if you have concerns, see how your system adjusts to it. The biological side, when you quadruple your biological side, like Patty was saying, you can have some of nutrient consumption nutrient issues. So you'll see your nitrates and phosphates going down just because the biological side is being so much more efficient, especially in like a smaller nanotanks and stuff like that. When you add that much biological consumption to a system, you just got to make sure you pay attention and notice like how you're. I mean, I say with all equipment, but you know, uh, we all wish we were perfect hobbyists.
Right. No.
But measure your adjustments and see how your system reacts to it and find a balance on it.
Yep. And Patty, whoa, what just happened? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.